I am Amy Dreyer. I'm the Associate Executive Director of Programs. I will be your moderator. Welcome to Workshop 6B, Connections Matter, Embracing Technology in Family Finding. In this workshop, we will hear from Keri Richmond. Keri Richmond is a passionate advocate for children and families in both her personal and professional life. After being in Ohio's foster care system off and on for 4 years as a child, Keri has become an active leader for the foster care reform. Before I hand over the Zoom to Keri, I'm going to do some housekeeping, which some of you have already heard, but certificates are available for the conference. You must have your Zoom name listed as your real name because that's how we're going to track you and be able to give you a certificate once you fill out a form. So if you're on here as Happy Dappy 123, put your real name in, and then we can find you and give you a certificate. We have a book table fundraiser. We have evaluations. I will drop some links in the chat. But if you have any questions during the workshop, put them in the chat box. Keri, it will be up to you if you'd like me to help you field them, or if you'd like to, you can set that up when you start, and I will go along with you. And if you have any handouts, anything like that, you can drop them in the chat, and our communications team can grab them and they can also put them in the network. So let's get started. Welcome.
Amazing. Thank you, Amy. Welcome, everyone. Happy Friday. It's kind of weird not seeing any of your faces. So I'm just assuming that everyone is smiling because it's Friday. And hopefully we can have some fun together and send you into the weekend feeling fired up. So as Amy said, my name is Keri Richmond, and today we're going to be talking about really exciting, innovative technology that Connect Our Kids has brought into the field. And I'm going to share a little bit about my personal story, my professional work, and why I believe that this technology will transform family finding and will lead to more healing for our kiddos that are in the system. With that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Awesome. All right. So I wear a few different hats throughout my professional and personal life, and I want to share some of those hats with you all today. So what I do in my 9-to-5 is I live and work in Washington, D.C., and I manage child welfare policy for the American Academy of Pediatrics. So I get to work alongside child abuse and neglect pediatricians, foster care pediatricians who are passionate about supporting children and families, helping them to thrive, and preventing any child welfare involvement. And when I'm not doing that, I'm working with Unbelievably Resilient. I'm the executive director of that nonprofit, and we are a group of former foster youth who have come together to share our stories with a goal of empowering other young people who are in the foster care system or individuals who once were in the system, empowering them that they have nothing to be ashamed of, and also trying to tear down some of the false and harmful stigmas and stereotypes about what someone in foster care looks like. And we do that through storytelling efforts like a podcast, conferences, things like that. So check us out. We share all sorts of topics and are hoping that it can be useful and helpful to not only young people, but adoptive and foster parents and child welfare professionals. I'm also part of the Connect Our Kids team. I'm a trainer there and got involved through UR, which I'll explain a little bit later. And finally, the hat that I wear that is probably the biggest hat and informs my passion in my professional life is my hat as someone who lived through the foster care system. So this is actually my foster care intake picture from when I was 4 years old, going back into the system for the second time. And I look at this picture and I see this little girl who's in so much pain, and I have so much compassion for her, but I love that there is that cheesy rainbow taped up on the wall, because it does represent hope and that, things, that there was healing in the future for me. So in my foster care story, I hit all of the sort of symbols of foster care involvement. So I went into foster care at 3 days old. My mom had already been deemed unfit to parent months before. Her and my father were separated. And so at 3 days old, I went from the hospital to my first foster family. I stayed with that foster family for 2 years. They thought they were going to adopt me. They had renamed me Teresa Kathleen. And it was very shocking and abrupt to them when at 2 years old, my father was able to get custody of me and we reunified. I reunified with my father for 2 years before I then went back into the foster care system due to some abuse that had been happening in the home and neglect. So when I went back into the system, second time around, I experienced multiple homes for about a year and then was able to find an adoptive placement. And I became the youngest of 6 kids, and our house was very busy, and it was really good for a couple of years. But within 2 years, our family system dissolved and crumbled. And before I knew it, my adoptive parents were getting divorced. There was sexual abuse happening in the home. There was substance use happening in the home. And when I was 7 years old, my parents split and I went to live with my adoptive mother, who became a single mom for the first time in 25 years, had no education, really was just a stay-at-home mom her whole life, and that was really hard. And so she struggled and we struggled, and my childhood was very chaotic because of that. And so I ended up living with her until high school, and things just got really messy in our home. She had her own alcohol issues, and eventually the chaos was too much and my best friend's family took me in informally. So I never went back into the system, but I did have what I would call a failed adoption. So I have all of these different perspectives of foster care, and at the end of the day, it was the village around me that provided me the love, the care, the encouragement that I needed to get to where I am today. And it wasn't just one person. It was one person at different stages of my life. It was my softball coach. It was my English teacher. It was my friends' parents, who all contributed to my healing, to helping me believe that I did not have to be like my family, that I could be a cycle breaker, that I had potential, that they were going to be there to support me. And that's the cheesy quote, it takes a village to raise a child. That's so true. And we're going to talk about that a lot today. So to sum up, the biggest message I hope that you walk away today from this presentation feeling and knowing is the importance of connections, and connections matter, especially for our kiddos in foster care who have experienced a very intense disruption, a disruption that impacts you physically, emotionally, mentally, a disruption that has long-term impacts. I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but we are learning so much about the trauma of removal, and the trauma of removal can be healed through connections. So let me rewind a little bit and take you all back to 2020. In 2020, Unbelievably Resilient, the nonprofit I told you about, had just come together. We were starting to do our work, and we got connected with the co-founders of Connect Our Kids. And they reached out and they're like, hey, we heard you're a group of individuals who were once in foster care. We have this technology that we want to show you and get your feedback on. Can we, come do a demo? And They did a demo, they showed us the Connect Our Kids tools, and all of us were blown away. All of us were like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. And also, why was this not a thing when we were in foster care? This is such a game changer. This really is so transformational. We just were excited about the technology. So excited that two of us then ended up deciding that we wanted to join the Connect Our Kids team as trainers. And we feel passionately about getting this technology out into the world because we see the benefit not only for finding connections and families and permanent placements for kids in so many different ways and how that looks, but it also can help piece together so many of the unanswered questions a lot of us who are in foster care go through life wondering or searching for, looking for. It is pioneering technology in a new way that's so exciting. So I'm going to just walk you through some of the Connect Our Kids tools, and we'll talk a bit about my story in that, and I'm happy to answer questions as we go, or we can wait until the end and do questions at that point. So all of the tools you can find on the Connect Our Kids website. This is a screenshot of the homepage. But really the goal in this technology is that you are expediting the process of connecting kids with a caring, loving, consistent adult who can be that needle in the haystack for them, who can speak, encouragement, affirmation, give them life, everyone needs support, everyone in the world. And some people have that privilege in their family and others don't. And so what we're doing here at Connect Our Kids is bringing tools to help do that process in a quicker way. So to find families, build connections, and create community for children in foster care. So the first tool that we have available is the People Search tool. And the People Search tool is really easy to use. Basically, you can type in someone's name and their location, and in a matter of seconds, you will have a list of addresses for a person, a list of phone numbers for a person, a list of email addresses, and even other relationships that are linked to that person. So if I knew, I was working on a kid's case and say, I know that child's aunt's name, then I could go here and I could type in, I know Johnny's aunt's name is Sarah Spees and that she lives in Ohio. Well, and in a matter of seconds, I now have all the information I need to reach out to her. When we think back 20 years ago, that took a long, long time to do something like that. Even today, people are spending a lot of their energy and a lot of their time trying to find the contact information to reach out to maybe a child's distant family member or a connection that they believe could be a good placement for that kiddo. So this is an incredible tool and just one of the tools that we offer. The next that I'll flag is our engagement center. So our engagement center is a library of templates that are available to anyone. You just go to our website and you can click on the engagement center, and we have letters, emails, and phone scripts. And those are for your use when you're starting to reach out to potential placements for a child or potential connections. It's just taking one less thing off your plate. So you don't even have to spend energy thinking about, oh, well, I want to call Connie's aunt. I don't even know what to say, or I want to send this email, but I have a million other things on my plate. This is just, we're trying to make it as easy as possible for you to be able to reach out to family members, to reach out to connections. So, you can check that out at any time. Anyone can access it. Spread the word to your friends. It is an amazing tool, and you can just customize the different fields for the child's case that you're working on. And then finally, the meat of what I'll talk about today is the Family Connections tool. And the Family Connections tool, is a place where you can discover and engage extended family and supporters of a child or children in care. It allows teams to build out family trees. I sort of like to compare it to Ancestry. If any of you have built out a family tree on Ancestry, this is what we're doing, but it's very customized to a child in foster care and the complex family trees that they have. I mean, we'll walk through it, but it is, we can go at the 10,000-foot view of just putting, mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, down to the 10-foot view of, we want to put adoptive family, foster family, biological family, we want to put step family, all of the family units. So you can build out these connection maps, what we call them, and be able to understand who are the supports for a child, and who are, long-term supports, who are potential placements for that child, also who are people that maybe aren't healthy to have in that child's life. You can really start to, have this virtual notebook on a child's case, making it easier to understand where is the needle in the haystack. That's a term that we use frequently here at Connect Our Kids, needle in the haystack. All right. So the benefits of this technology is that it's free to all child welfare professionals. Because it is philanthropically fundraised, it makes it very accessible to professionals. And we want it to be accessible to professionals because we believe that it's transformative and helping you to do your job and helping you to get done the things that you need to get done in a quicker, easier way. We train and support any child welfare professional who wants to use this tool. We will sit down and do general trainings. We'll sit down and do hands-on trainings. We want to be available to you to make sure that this tool is, as helpful as it can be. We're in 44 states. We have served nearly 10,000 children, and we have found over 100,000 connections for kids. In estimating how much time is reduced in family finding, it's about 60%. So a lot of the work that we're doing in child welfare has needed to embrace technology for a long time. So much of the work that we're doing is still, pushing papers and trading hands through, physical files full of papers. But now we're embracing this tool that can just, I feel like it's creating a digital archive of such important information on a child and on their family tree, and family extending past just the family that is blood. And we have found 6.5 times the number of connections found. So security, obviously, this is something that we take very seriously. It's a top priority because we don't want this information to get into the wrong hands. We run on the Google Cloud platform, which is a high-rated platform. It's a FedRAMP high-rated platform. So everyone has to have a password and a login to be able to access information. And then information is kept securely between teams, and different teams can have different permission levels for how much someone on your team is allowed to see about a case, edit a case, all of those sorts of things. We don't collect your data or any data that people enter into the software. We cannot even see the data that you enter into the software. So when we say privacy and security are a top priority, we mean that and we live that. No case information or proprietary information is required, and any information found using our tools is just being pulled in through publicly available sources and data that already exists. So why connect our kids? This is where I'm going to go back into my story a bit. So in my own healing journey, I spent years and years and years of my life wondering all of these different questions, wondering about family that I had out there, wondering about the things that I was told as a kid about my family and if those were true or not true. I just had so many questions. I mean, I didn't even, as a child growing up, I didn't know what my first words were, what was I like as a baby. There's just so many things that people don't realize are family privileges, and how much information you lose about yourself and about your family when you're going through the foster care system. So a few years ago, my adoptive mom passed away. And just before she had passed away, I had actually done a official request for information, filled out paperwork, paid some money to the state of Ohio. And I was like, I want my foster care file. And I want to see this information for myself and be able to piece together so many of the missing puzzle pieces in my life. What they sent me was not worth the money that I paid. They just sent me my adoption certificate and my birth certificate. And I was like, really, this is it? This is all you have for me? And I felt really disappointed because, again, so many unanswered questions that I had that I was really curious about. So when my adoptive mom passed away, I was going through her belongings and I found this file that you see on the screen. And it has like my birth name and it's scratched out, and then it has my adoptive name. And in this old, tattered, beaten up folder were all of these files about my life. It had court documents, it had doctor's reports, it had police reports, it had psych evaluations on my biological mom, it had psych evaluations on me, it had lists of family health history. It had just a narrative that helped me to start to understand who I was, who my family was, what were some of the things that had been generationally passed down. There's so much important information. And having that information also helped me to see and understand that everything that I had been through was valid. And that I didn't have to blame myself, and that I am doing pretty okay for all of the things that I have gone through, and that I can have a bit more grace and how I look at myself and how harsh I am in myself and how harsh I am with my family members. I also opened up so much compassion that I had for my birth parents and learning about the trauma that they had endured. And so it was such a gift. And I say all of that because information is something that you lose when you go into the foster care system. So much information, so much of your life is fragmented, and you rely on your memory and you rely on what people tell you, and that can be really hard. And for a lot of people who are going into the foster care system, they lose those connections. Those connections get cut to their family, to their community. And then they're in their 20s and they're learning, from 23andMe that they have cousins that live down the road. Or I was literally this morning talking to a former foster youth who his high school teacher was his sister, and he didn't know until he graduated. It's things like that that just get so lost in the shuffle of information and in the separation of foster care. So that's why Connect Our Kids. Connect Our Kids is rebuilding and keeping all of that information through these tools and giving kids answers to some of these questions so that then they're not, in their late 20s, not understanding what their family tree looks like. And that's such a gift, not only for them and us helping them to find permanent placement and to find that person or people that can be their people, but also just to know, I have all these cousins, or I have aunts and uncles or nephews and nieces. All of that's such a gift. So I love this quote by Dr. Bruce Perry. If you all have not read What Happened to You by him and Oprah wrote that together. It's an incredible book on trauma and understanding the long-term impacts of trauma. And this quote says, understanding what we inherit and how we inherit is necessary for the insight required to make intentional change. change at the individual level, such as healing after trauma, and change at the cultural level, such as identifying and changing destructive policies that embed racism, for example. So when we're thinking about the Connect Our Kids tools, I don't want us to just think about it as a family finding tool. I want us to think about it also as this could be so healing to a child once they leave the system, to have this database of information about their life, who they are, their family, and being able to understand that will help them to heal after trauma, to make intentional change, to be the cycle breakers in their family units. And so we're going to walk through the tools and Connect Our Kids. And I'm going to sort of put that lens on all of the tools so that we're taking it a step past family finding. And if we're hurt in relationships, we heal in relationships. And Connect Our Kids is trying to restore healing and healthy and consistent and stable relationships for kids that are in foster care. All right, so we're going to head over to the Family Connections site and do a quick demo. I'm just going to check the chat really quick.
Keri, this is Amy. Someone had a question and was wondering if this was available in New York State, someone named Chris.
It's available in New York State, yes. Sorry, it's really hard for me to keep up with the chat, and so
That's okay.
If you can do that for me, Amy, that's amazing.
Yep, there's been lots of, I think, comments saying amazing and different things like that, but that was the main question, but that is a tool that's available to everybody. So maybe there's a link. Yeah, I can drop a link to your page in the chat if you'd like.
Perfect. Yeah, that's great. And I think my colleague is also on the line today, so she can also help put some of those links into the chat as well.
Okay.
Awesome. All right. So now we are, we're going to go behind the veil, and I'm going to show you what it were to look like if you had a Family Connections account. This is the interface that is first pulled up when you're in Family Connections. You can see here that this is what your team would look like. So these would be your colleagues. And when I talked earlier about security and privacy, I'll just show you here that when you go to add a team member, you can see that there's team permissions. These team permissions range from complete permissions to add, remove, or edit members, and then it sort of scales down. And the least amount of permissions someone would have is that they're just able to come in here and basically view a case or cases. And a good example of that is we have Dory in here, and Dory has no team permissions because she is a CASA. So say that you're an agency and you think that it's useful for the CASA to be able to look at the child's Family Connections map to better understand that child's, what their family tree looks like, and to just have more information. And you could add them in as one of your team members and then just set their permissions to no team permissions and only give them access to that one child's case. So it gets really customizable on this tool, and you really determine how much or how little information is shared among your team and with the people that are working on that child's case. All right. Let's go ahead and head into cases. So everything that you're seeing here today is all test data. We are not putting any real kids in here. I think I have my own connections map in here just because I'm also, in the process of building out my family tree, and that's the only sort of like real person that's in here. So we're going to walk through what it looks like to add a case, and I'm just going to go up here and click on that blue bubble on the right hand corner, and you can sort of select teams. So if you're in your agency, you had different teams to choose from, you would just go ahead and select which one you wanted to add it to. I'm going to go ahead and add it to our demo team. And then you can see here that we have a very long list of customizable fields about the child. So you can enter in their name or a case file number, but you need one or the other to be your identifier. So Amy, can you help me out and can you give me a fake name that we can use today? Any name.
I don't know. Eric Smith.
Eric Smith. I like it. So we're going to work on Eric's case today. We're going to put this in as a new case, and we can then add his birthday. We can add all sorts of information about him. Well, maybe he was not born in 2022. Let's not make him a newborn. Let's make him a little older than that. So we can go ahead and add all of this information in. You just customize it however you want. You can add in the residence if you know that. You can add in the date it was added to your caseload, and what down here in highlights, any relevant information that's going to help you remember Eric. So I say, like, as an example, that maybe you want to note that Eric's teacher made the report to CPS. Eric is really close with his teacher. Whatever it is, this can be like your notebook. Then I just click add case, and now we're going to go in and work on Eric's case. So when you click on work on case and it's the first time you're working on a child's case, you'll see that you get to choose what sort of workspace you want. There's different templates that range from family groupings complex to family groupings simple. That's sort of what I was describing to you earlier when I said, you know, the differences between a 10,000-foot view on a child's case down to a 10-foot view. So here you'll see that it has broken out adoptive siblings, bio siblings, adoptive family pets, step parents, bio parents, all sorts of different information. And you'll see you can actually change the different sorts of views on a workspace. Maybe you want horizontal, maybe you want vertical. And then down here we have community support maps that would just be specific to mentors or school supports that you might want to build out for a child. We recommend starting in the default workspace that captures most of the fields that you would want to have in here on a child's case. And when you're just starting out, it's much better to do a default workspace than to just try to create a blank workspace where you really have to fill out every placeholder. We just rolled out also a new feature. It's a guide me feature. And if you were to select this feature, it would just walk you through using a template and how to add all that information. Let me just go back. And I'm going to go ahead and do default workspace. All right. So now you can see we have all of these placeholders for Eric. We have Eric's bio family we have his bio mom side, his bio dad side. Down here, we have groups of people from his school, from his neighborhood, from his community, his foster family. All of these fields are customizable. So you can really edit it and customize it to the child's case that you're working on. So down here, this group says other/unknown, but maybe Eric plays soccer and I feel like there's a lot of great people on his soccer team that I think should be a part of his connections map. So I might rename this field Eric's soccer team. You can do different things like that, or maybe you want to add people from his church or whatever it may be. You can customize all of that. So if you wanted to start adding in new people to the case, you could just go hover over whichever person in the family you want to add, click on the placeholder, and it will bring you to this option to create a new person or select an existing person. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new person. And this is where I can start to fill out any information I already know about Eric's family. So I know Eric's mom's name is Roberta. And I know that her name's Roberta Richmond, but she has been married a couple times. So I'm also going to add some alternate names. so it increases our search results. So I'm going to go ahead and add her maiden name in here, and I'm going to go ahead and add one of her other married names. Down here, you have more fields about the relationship with the child, date of birth, gender identity. There's a bunch of different fields here, which can be helpful in your reporting, either your state reporting or your organization's internal reporting. So being able to identify if this is a relative or a connection that's been located, if it's someone previously known to the child. And then in the case for Roberta, Roberta is unfortunately deceased. So we're going to go ahead and indicate that. You'll also see a bunch of customized fields like gave permission to share info, what support's being offered, where was this person born, what's their education level. And again, those are like gold mines for a child when they get into their adult age and they're wondering, you know, I just learned 3 weeks ago that my dad did not graduate high school. And that's something I never knew in my entire life. And I was going through that file that I showed you all. And in one of the really small lines, it had listed that the highest amount of education he had was like he didn't even finish high school. It was like 10th grade or something. So it's stuff like that that's really can be so helpful to a child down the line after their time in foster care to have some of that information. So I would just encourage you, if you know, fill it in. It's such a gift to have that information. Down here, you have contact details. It's really great to, if at the very least you don't know the residence, like the full address, to at least put in a city and state, because that will also help with your search results. So I know that Roberta lived in South Bend, Indiana, so I'm going to go ahead and add that in. And down here, if you had any of the contact information, you could put that, job title, employer, social media links, and highlights. So again, just filling out as much information as you know about a child's case and family. So when I added Roberta in, you can see here, this little blue bubble with 2 people icons popped up. That means that the system has already sort of run a backside people search and found data on Roberta. So when I click on that blue button and I pull up Roberta, it's now importing all of that data, and it's letting me go through and sift, you know, what sort of information do I now want to import onto Eric's connection map, and what will be helpful. So if I were going to be doing some outreach to a family member, then I would really want to go ahead and just select all, because that's going to be useful when I start to make a call or I start sending emails and I'm not sure which email is correct. Then it's better to have all of them so that you can just reach out in one fell swoop. So then you can import all of that information, and now it's pulling all of the relationships that are linked to Roberta. So publicly available in some way, here's a list of them. So I also want to import these people. And that will be helpful when I start to build out Eric's case even more. So I go ahead and save that information, and it will then automatically update Roberta, her little profile on Eric's case. So now when I click on details, I can see, sorry, let me refresh it. I can see all of the addresses on file for her, telephone numbers, email addresses. Also, some other search tools that we have available. There's People Search and Accruent, which are integrated. And then we have a list of free search tools, things like Facebook, LinkedIn, Find a Grave, Arrest.org. These are all, you know, anyone can access those. And then if your organization pays for search tools already, we've also integrated some of those paid tools in, but you would have to log in with your organization's account. So there's Seneca, TruthFinder, a bunch of others that you might want to use in Family Connections. So I want to show you guys just briefly how, you know, how one of these would work. So I just clicked on Facebook. I'm not even typing in Roberta's name. The system already typed in her name. I can go ahead and click on Roberta's Facebook, and you might find some really helpful information by looking at a family member's Facebook page. Maybe, there's other connections. Maybe you learn about where they work, or maybe there's photos of a child. That is like the photos I showed you guys earlier of me as a child. Those are like 2 of 10 that I have total. That's another thing that you lose when you go into foster care is pictures of you as a child. And so it is really cool to be able to use the family connections map also to sort of capture some of those things and put it on a child's case so that, again, they have access to things like those down the road. So we have a extension, Connect Our Kids extension. And when I go ahead and run that extension, it pulls up all of the cases that are on my caseload. And so now, say that I wanted to save Roberta's Facebook, the system will take a screenshot and turn it into a PDF and save it to Eric's map. So I just have to go to click on Eric's case, click Add Document, and now it's generating that PDF automatically for me. So once it's done doing that, that took about 20 seconds. Now I can just go ahead and title it and save it to Roberta. And when I go back into the Family Connections tool, it will be there for me. So now when I go to click on Roberta, I can go to Documents, and there it is. So it is just making things very quick for you. You're able to gather so much information in a matter of seconds on somebody. Let's build out some of the other people, and you'll also notice it tracks any engagement, but I'll review that in a second. We're going to add some siblings in. So when I added Roberta, if you guys recall, I imported a bunch of other relationships. So that's where now I'm just going to start plugging in puzzle pieces. And I know that Eric has told me he has a sister named Jennifer. I know that he's told me he has a sister, a stepsister actually, from his mother's partner named Hillary. So I can go ahead and add Hillary under step siblings. I know that he also told me that he has a sister named Mary. So I'm going to go ahead and add Mary in there. And you really just start to build out the connections for a kiddo. Say that you then wanted to learn a little bit more about someone. So I'm going to go ahead and go to Mary and run a people search on her. And for location, I know that she also was in Ohio and Florida, just from my conversations with Eric and some other people who've worked on the case. So I'm just going to go ahead and add those locations in. And I know that she was remarried, so I'm also going to go ahead and add her maiden name. So then when I click next, this sometimes happens where there's might be some low confidence matches, and you can look at those and sort of be able to differentiate which person you're looking for by the locations. So I know the Mary that I'm looking for has never lived in Texas, Georgia, Tennessee, whatever. So I can go ahead and narrow it down and then click on the Mary I'm looking for. And now it's pulling all of that information. I can see her different married names. I can see, again, all of the addresses I want to import, phone numbers, email addresses, and this one even pulled Facebook accounts. Then I can go ahead and, again, import relationships and just keep going through the process. Amy, do I have any questions in the chat? Just want to pause there because I know I went over a lot so far.
No, there was a comment about that said I could see any kid of any kind of adoption search, like those for all adult adopted persons searching for bio family, to use these tools as well. I have a question. I know, is this specifically made for organizations and agencies, but if a child who is in foster care and then either continuing through foster care, aging out, adopted, however the path takes them, can they get a copy of this information? Is that built in or understood at all? Because I could see this being so valuable down the road for an adopted person or a foster youth.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're spot on.
Okay.
And it would be made available to them. You can export all of this data and I'll show you that process. Of course, it would be up to the agency and they wouldn't be the ones that have access to this information. So it's a matter of them okaying sharing it with the young person, which in my personal opinion, I think that should be automatically something that's done. It's really frustrating to hear from a lot of my peers who are now struggling to get their files, to get access to any information about their past. And so this is making it much more accessible. So great question, Amy. Thanks for asking that. Okay, so now that we've imported information about Mary, let's say that we wanted to go ahead and reach out. Well, then I'm going to go ahead and click on the tab under Mary that says details. And I can go ahead and send an email directly through this platform. So I would just click on send emails and it would go ahead and pull up this little box. Before I do that though, let me show you how amazing it is that you don't even have to leave this page. So down in the left-hand corner, there's a blue box and it's a little chat box. If you have any questions, you can just pop them in here and we reply. Typically try to under 30 minutes, but we'll always let you know what our reply time is right here. So you can send us a message. And down here, we have a ton of different help articles. But what we also have is a link to all of our engagement templates I showed you guys earlier. So you can just click in here and head into the Engagement Templates Center. And I am getting ready to send my first email engagement to Eric's sister, Mary. So I can go down here and either download the template, or what I like to do is I just go ahead and I copy and paste it all. And you'll notice in here that we have some fields where you would then customize it to the child's case that you're working on. So it's not, my computer's not cooperating with me, so I guess I'll just download the template. So you can download it into a Microsoft Word document. And then you could go ahead and you can see all the customizable fields like the date of birth, other ways to contact, you'd add in your information, et cetera, et cetera. Ah, my computer's spazzing out, so sorry. Oh my gosh, what's happening? There we go. Okay, so now when I go ahead and click on send emails, it has added all of the emails that we already imported that are on file for Mary. Then I would just go ahead and paste in that first engagement email. I would fix it all up and hit send. And when I would hit send, then the system would auto-populate it under this engagement tab and it would say, Keri emailed Mary on May 13th at 1:21. And it would then track all of that information. It would have all the copies in there. So you're really being able to see all of the activity that's happening in a child's family finding, and you're able, for the most part, to not even leave this connections map screen to be doing all of this work. Same thing under details where you have all the list of phone numbers. We have a mobile app, and if you download our mobile app, then you're able to pull up a child's case that you're working on and somebody that you wanted to reach out to. And instead of having to sit there and type in the 10-digit number, you just click on it and it automatically dials for you. You make the call. We're hopefully just reducing the amount of time that you have to spend and just making it so it's one less step or one less thing on your plate. Okay, so now you've sort of seen how I built out the map of connections. I'll just show you a few more things. So again, you can think of this as like a digital notebook on Eric or whoever the child is that you're working on. I told y'all earlier that this is how you're starting to understand where Eric's connections are, where is that needle in the haystack. So we have some fields that you can use to highlight and mark different people. So we have pieces like, oh, this person is of interest. This person's a potential supporter. This is a potential placement. This is a no-go, or this is a long-term support. So in just looking at Eric's map, well, Roberta, his mom, has passed away. So obviously she's a no-go. Mary, however, Eric has told us he's super close with her. Let's say we've reached out a bunch of times. The conversations have been great. He's starting to do visits. Well, then we're going to go ahead and mark her as green, like she's a potential placement. We know for his sister, Jennifer, that Jennifer already has 5 kids of her own. She's already sort of indicated that she would not be open to having Eric be placed with her, but that she wants to be a part of his life and, you know, that she wants to be there for him. So we know that's a long-term support for him. So we just really start to build out this map and make it useful in the work that we're doing, finding him that potential long-term permanent connection. Up here, you can see some different tabs. These are different views of what we've walked through, but again, it will list any work that you've done on a child's case. This can be really helpful if you're a supervisor and you want to understand what your team is doing, or if you and your teammate are working on the same case together, then you can sort of go in and review and say, oh, okay, I can see, you know, on May 13th, all of these new relationships were added. You would be able to see if there were email exchanges or phone calls, and the system's just automatically tracking all of that for you. And the next tab, it's a view of all of the people we've already imported on Eric's case. Not all of these people are yet on his map, but they're in the library. And I like this view of people because if you can see, there's the blue bubbles on several of these people, and that's letting me know that the system has done that back-end people search and that there's information waiting for me on those people. So maybe one day I'm just gonna block off an hour and I'm just gonna run a bunch of people searches on all of these individuals on Eric's case. So that's just a different view. Over here, documents. So here's the screenshot we took of Roberta's Facebook. We have that PDF right there. We can add documents. So if you have something, you know, that you have applicable to someone else, maybe there's Jennifer gave you something that you want to add, you would just upload it here, title it, and it would save to this library of documents. Again, this is where taking it past just the family finding that's happening, this is where you could store so much valuable information that then somebody who is no longer in the foster care system is going to look back on and be so grateful to have that information, to have things like a screenshot of a Facebook account that might have pictures for them, or maybe a foster parent who is no longer going to be their foster parent gives you a school report, a card, anything. Like, you can get really, really creative with how this technology is used. Here's where you would export the case data. So in exporting the case data, it would turn it into an Excel file. And because we've talked about privacy and security, any data that's exported has to come with a password. So it generates a random password for me that I then need to copy to my clipboard, and I need to go put that somewhere safe so that anytime I want to open that zip file, I type in the password that is associated with Eric's data. So just when I click on the Excel, again, it asks me for the password. I can go ahead and paste that in, and boom, it takes me to an Excel file that lists out relationships. So I can see all of the people that we have imported. I can see how often we've reached out. Again, this can be very useful internally for reporting mechanisms, but also useful if a young person requested this information. This is a great way that you could share that with them. It has phone numbers in here, emails, a bunch of different data there. And then finally, we also have the ability to import. So you can choose, maybe you have already some existing Excel files that might have relationships or other information. You can just go ahead and pop it in from your computer files. So this is sort of it wasn't quick. It wasn't quick, but this is sort of the 101 on the Family Connections map and how it works and some of the capabilities. And I just cannot stress enough, and I know you all know this, and I know this is your heart's work, that connections matter for kids and for kids in foster care. We've had so many of our relationships disrupted, and hurt people, but healed people heal people. And how do we promote healing? Well, we promote strong, healthy relationships. And so this tool is helping to do that in a really fantastic way. And it's helping to have a restored sense of identity for a child. For so much of my life, I felt like I just didn't understand who I was fully until I got access to that file. And all of a sudden, it makes me emotional just thinking about it. All of a sudden, all these questions that I pondered for so long, I had answered. I can't tell you how many times as a kid, I would Google search behind my adoptive family's back, my dad, just trying to learn about myself and my family history. And it was really hard having friends that automatically had that family privilege and access to that information. So I believe so much in the technology here, not only in family finding, but in the power that it has to be a healing tool down the road for young people who have been through the system. So I will pause there. I'm so grateful for y'all's attentiveness, and I'm happy to open it up for questions and the remaining time we have together.
I just wanted to say right away that what I've learned today from you and the keynote speaker, which you stated right at the beginning that you guys actually know each other, is the fact that I feel, I don't know if the word is brave, but I'll use brave for right now, that you and him decided to take your lived experience, whether or not it was negative or not, and took it and just went for it to educate, to help those through your pain and your experience. You took it and went a different direction. You went the positive direction. You went, you know what? All right, I went through it, but how can I help someone else? And I think all the information that you give is just amazing, and very interesting, that we are taking for granted the things that we get from like a 23andMe, and this is the system of foster care is, we all know, is not, it's just not. And this gives, there's a piece, like one step at a time, to connecting people. I say not fixing, because it's not fixing it yet, but it's getting to a point where we're taking the problems one step at a time. And I commend you on this information. This was wonderful. So that was my comment to my question.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you saying that. And I think, for us, I know I would not be who I am today if it weren't for the adults that I had in my life. Even though my home life was chaotic and unsafe and not supportive, if it weren't for the people in my community, like I said, the coaches, the teachers, my friends' parents, I can't imagine where I'd be. And that's the reality for a lot of young people going through the system, is that they're so alone, they're so disconnected from relationships. They have people that are ready to step in, right? They have teachers that they're connecting with. And sometimes we're so overburdened in the system that it's really hard to identify who those people are for the kid. And then there's a kid who's so misunderstood because, they've had all this pain and trauma, and maybe they're bouncing around from foster family to foster family. And you're like, oh my gosh, why is this child so hard to place? And it's like, well, if we look a little closer, there's someone there that they connect with, that they feel safe with, that they feel loved by, that can be a long-term supporter or replacement. And I just feel like this technology can really help to find that person much faster. So thank you. Oh, go ahead, Amy.
I was gonna say, I love the idea that this I'm not sure why I love the idea of tracking, you're kind of tracking where the child's going. So say the child does go back home to their first family, biological family, however you want to phrase it, back to another foster home, seeing that in there, maybe that child goes back to live with the foster family he already had a connection with, you know, because we know that that doesn't happen a lot. So maybe that happens more, or maybe that foster family isn't fostering anymore for whatever the reason is, but they knew some other biological relatives because this young man mentioned that he had like an aunt in Indiana or wherever. Like I love the things that are implied by this, by what you've created, like the implications on the connections that can be made, and the fact that this morning we saw in the presentation, you know, we know that adoptees are getting redacted information. You know, so you're getting one sentence, 3 sentences redacted, 1 word, 4 words redacted. This should be given with no redaction. Like, here are some true facts. Here are people we've connected you to. So after seeing this morning's presentation and then coming on to this, it seems like a no-brainer. Like, this should be available to anyone who's been in this kind of system, because it's their information. It's your information, and you have a right to it, and it shouldn't be redacted. So it's really great. It's really awesome.
Yes, Queen. Yes, I'm with you. Yes, yes, a million times yes.
Really awesome.
I think we really, really, really take for granted, and again, I'm horrible at words, but the simple knowledge of just a food that a child loves, a smell, a toy, a something that they can bring with them to each home is just, we take for granted that that's something that we're learning about. They're connected to smells and then they're missing each time they're moving to a different home. It's traumatizing so much, but at the same time, something like this system just can help that one little bit, just that little bit.
Yeah, and there's really interesting research out there about how people who know their family histories do better in life. They have a stronger sense of themselves. They have a stronger sense of how they show up in the world. And I think that there's a tendency in the child welfare system to want to protect a child from that information. But even in the trauma, even in knowing about my family's generational trauma, I'm also able to see strength in that. I am the daughter of a father who struggled with substance use. And he is the son of a woman who saw her entire family be slaughtered during World War II, who immigrated to America as a single mother of 5. And so, of course, like, his life was impacted by her pain and trauma. But in knowing all of that, I still can admire the pieces of my family where, wow, that took a lot of courage and strength for my grandma to leave the Philippines, come bring her kids to America because she wanted to give them a better life. Did she do that perfectly? No, but I can still see some of the beautiful pieces in that and feel like, okay, I can take that and build that as a tool in my life and in myself. And so those are the gifts that come with having answers and having access to information.
Knowledge, power.
Reminds me so much of everything that we hear when we're testifying and talking to adult adoptees who want their original birth certificates because they want to do a search. And it's the same thing. And except, why wait until they're 40, 50, 60 years old, but, you know, giving it to the people that need it from the very beginning. You know, like, you should have it from the get-go. So even though it's been lost along the way, build it back now, not in 50 years when, you know, you're really looking for crumbs. I was wondering too, is there a crossover? Because as you're going through these tools, I'm thinking, wow, I'm surprised some adult adoptees haven't started using these tools for search.
Yes, Thank you for asking that. So it's really exciting. Actually, Connect Our Kids is rolling out a Connections Matter Academy. And in the Connections Matter Academy, it's all information geared at adults who are starting, or young adults starting to process all of this and wanting to have, wanting to build out their own connections map. And so we're wanting to build it out in a way where it's not so overwhelming, because some of the information can be a lot to take in, especially if you're told one thing for 20 years of your life and then overnight you find out that was all a lie, and you actually, your high school teacher was your sister, things like that. So once we build out the Connections Matter Academy and curriculum and roll that out, it will be sort of a guiding point to helping adult adoptees or individuals who were once in foster care navigate their own connections map.
And let's see. Oh, someone answered. I was going to say you had a question, but it looks like Samantha answered.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. So if you go to our website, you can look at all of our tools. They're all free. And you do have to sign up for a training with our team, and then we can get you set up on the platform. And we do a training like you saw today. And then we also offer hands-on trainings. So if your team wanted to do, a full team training with us for the demo, and then you got in the platform and you started to play around with it, and you're like, I'm still confused about how to do a people search or whatever it is, then you can schedule time with us again, and we will walk you through, okay, here's step by step how you can do that. Sorry, Susan, I think you wanted to say something.
Yeah, Keri, I just wanted to thank you for doing this and for coming and sharing this tool. I think I see Claude nodding. It's been really, I think, eye-opening and really helpful for everyone. And I mean, aside from all the things you've talked about, and I'm not sure who's on this meeting right now, if it's mostly professionals or mostly parents, but I still think that there's a role, for me, as when I had new 18-year-olds, it really fell to me to help them build those connections and figure out their history. And I didn't, it shouldn't be their burden alone to figure this out. So I wonder if the coalition, or if we can figure out or talk about ways that we could support caregivers and adoptive parents in helping use this tool maybe.
I am so glad you brought that up, and I didn't get to get too much into that today. And it was my understanding today was more professionals, but if there are foster or adoptive parents in here, I like to give this analogy about a bookshelf, and how if we think about families as a bookshelf, and you have a grandpa up here, a son down here, and then a child in foster care, there's been a lot that's happened in that family line. And if, say, the grandpa hasn't healed from their generational trauma or their trauma, their hurts, their hangups, their bookshelf starts to get really full, and those books start to fall down to the next bookshelf, which is the son. And if the son is also not adopting some of those healing and not taking care of their hurts and hangups and their trauma, then again, the books fall and the shelves fall. And that's how, I envision generational trauma. Why do I say that? Because for kids in foster care who have been adopted, not only are they inheriting their first family's bookshelf, but they're inheriting your family's bookshelf. And so I think it's really important for them to not just understand your family and what's happened in your in that adoptive unit, but they also need to have the information about their first family to be able to break and heal from those cycles and the things that have happened there. So you can play such an important supporting role in making sure that they don't feel, like I just said, I was sneaking around in high school doing searches on my family because I didn't feel safe to bring that up and say, I actually want to understand more about my first family. And that doesn't mean that I don't love you, but I felt that. I felt like it was betraying. And so as parents, like being able to encourage your kids, it's okay if you're curious about that. It's actually very natural that you would wonder about where you come from and about your the cultural pieces of you or what other existing family you have out there. We could do an entire different training just on those aspects, which are so important. And I really appreciate you bringing that up, Susan. And I think your kids are so lucky that you are thinking about something like that, because that can be such a healing activity for you all to do together as parent and child.
So Susan gave me an idea. So this can be a thing for later, but we support a parent leaders group here in New York State, where parent leaders come once a month and we talk about things and we learn things and they bring items to the table. And I could see this as an item that we maybe bring to the table for them, because then they could go back to their parent groups and teach them about this. So, oh, I see Katie clapping. Yeah, so let's have a discussion after, so we'll connect because I'll have your information. But I think that that would be a great jumping in point. So I'm glad Susan brought that up too. I was like, oh, light bulbs going off. So thank you on many levels for this.
Well, thank you all, and we're happy to join whatever. We are still new, and we want to get the word out about this platform, and really appreciate you all sharing the space for us to do that today. And I'm always available. You can reach me at Keri@connectourkids.org. I can pop that in the chat. We also have a support email. It's just support@connectourkids.org, and then you can reach out on the website. We'll have all of those resources and make sure that they're shared with you all after today's session.